Hi, Michael. Thank you for being with us again. Today's question says, through self-inquiry, one finally transcends all the prarabdha karma or also the sanchita karma?
Through self-investigation, we will eventually eradicate ego. Without ego, there can be no karmas, because ego is the doer of the karmas and the experience of the fruit. So when ego dies, all three karmas, the āgāmya, the actions done with desire, the prarabdha karma, the destiny, what we're to experience in this life, and sañcita, the fruit of the yet to be experienced fruit of all past karmas, all will be destroyed. Bhagavan explains this very clearly in verse 38 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu. What he says in this verse is, if we are the doer of actions, we will experience the resulting fruit. Bhagavan often says if, but who is the doer of action? It's the actions are done by body, speech, and mind. But as ego, we identify this body, speech, and mind as I. So whatever actions are done by the body or the speech or the mind, we experience it as I am doing this. So when Bhagavan says, if we are a doer of action, he means if we rise as ego and consequently experience ourselves as the doer of actions, we will experience the resulting fruit. The actions that bear fruit are the actions that are driven by our desires, attachments, and so on, our likes and dislikes, our hopes and our fears, and all these. So the actions that are driven by our will bear fruit. Those fruit we don't experience in this lifetime. They get stored in what is called sanchita, which is sanchita literally means the pile or the store of the fruits of past karmas which have not yet borne fruit, which have not yet been experienced, that is. And in each life, or each dream, because every life is just a dream, certain fruit from our sanchita are selected for us to experience in each life. That what the fruit that we are to experience in this life is our prārabdha, our destiny. So all these exist only for ourself as ego. So long as we rise as ego, we'll be doing actions by our will and we'll be experiencing the fruit. But then Bhagavan says in the next sentence, when one knows oneself by investigating who is the doer of action, doership will depart and all the three karmas will slip off. This is the state of liberation, which is eternal. There he says, when one knows oneself by investigating who is the doer of action, doership will depart. When doership departs, experiencership will also depart, because they're just two sides of the same coin. So as ego, we always experience ourselves as I am a doer. We also experience ourselves as I am the experiencer. So when we know ourselves, ego will be destroyed. Therefore, the doership and experiencership will depart. And then who is left to do any actions or to experience any fruit? So all the three karmas will slip off. That is the root of all these karmas is ego. When ego dies, they will all die. So this is the state of liberation. Bhagavan says, Nittamam mukti. It means liberation which is eternal. Eternal doesn't mean that from the time that we attain liberation, from then onwards, we'll remain in the state of liberation. It doesn't mean that. It means we are always in the state of liberation. Even now, we are in the state of liberation. It is only because when our rising as ego is only a seeming rising. So long as we rise as ego, all this karma seems to be real. But when we investigate ourselves and find out what we really are, we'll understand that we had never risen as ego, and we were therefore were therefore never the doer of any action or the experiencer of any fruit. This is the state of liberation, which is eternal. Bhagavan also referred to this in verse 33 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. What he says in this verse is, there's a belief, and it's supported by many scriptural texts, but when a person attains jnana, they no longer do any āgāmya. Their sañcita, the actions that they're due to experience, the store of the fruits of actions have not yet been experienced, they will all be destroyed. But so long as the body remains, the prarabdha has to be experienced. This is said for those people who take viññāni to be a person, take viññāni to be a body. So what Bhagavan says in this verse is saying that sañcita and āgāmya do not adhere to viññāni, but prarabdha does remain, is a reply said to the questions of others. What Bhagavan means by others is those who are not ready to accept his teachings as they are, his very simple teachings. There are many people who cling to old ideas taught in various scriptures and books, whereas a lot of the ideas that are taught in the older books, if we are willing to accept Bhagavan's teachings, those older teachings become redundant. They're still appropriate for those who are not yet ready to accept Bhagavan's teachings. But if we accept Bhagavan's teachings, most of the other teachings in the older texts become redundant. So if it is said that prarabdha remains for viññāni, that is not a teaching applicable to those. I mean, that's not a teaching that we need to accept if we are following Bhagavan's path, because according to Bhagavan's path, viññāni is not the body. When ego dies, what remains is jnana alone. Jnana means pure awareness. And Bhagavan often used to say, jnana me jnani. Jnana alone is the jnani. So jnani is not anything other than pure awareness. So for the jnani, there is no body. And because there's no body, there's also no destiny for that body. So to say that prarabdha remains for viññāni is appropriate only to those who take viññāni to be the body. Then to emphasize this point, what he says in the next sentence is, just as any of the wives do not, if a husband has 3 wives, if a husband dies, none of the wives will remain unwidowed. They'll all of them will be widowed. So what Bhagavan says here, just as any of the wives do not remain unwidowed when the husband dies, know that when the doer has died, all 3 karmas cease. So Bhagavan again emphasizes here, when ego dies, all 3 karmas are finished. That's like if a husband dies, all 3 wives will be widowed. The question that I've been asked today, through self-inquiry, one finally transcends all of the prarabdha and also the sañcita. That's, I don't know where this idea came from, but prarabdha goes, but sañcita remains, because sañcita is just the store of fruits which are to be experienced in the future. But as I say, when the doer goes, when the ego is destroyed, there's no one left to experience any prarabdha, either in this lifetime or in any future lifetime. So the sañcita, the prarabdha, the āgāmya, all are simultaneously destroyed, along with ego. All these exist only for ourselves as ego. When we cease to be ego, when we know ourselves as we really are, we'll know that we were never ego, but we never did any āgāmya, we never experienced any prarabdha, and we had never accumulated any sañcita.